Hello and welcome to this presentation as Pseudocode, which is a design tool, much like a mock-up or an IPO chart. There are others. So, our learning intention is that students can explain the purpose of pseudocode and the conventions. You hear people say, and you see it in books saying, there are no rules to pseudocode. Well, that is strictly speaking true because it's not an actual programming language, but the VCAA has published particular rules, so that's what I'm talking about here. You might have to write pseudocode in the exams. Certainly questions do come up from time to time, but you certainly do need to use it, or you don't need to use it, but you're likely to use it as a design tool if you want to get a good mark, and I'm going to be throwing some pseudocode your way, so you should know how it works. So, it's a design tool, and so the question that I would pose you if you're here in person was, why would we use it at all instead of just writing actual code? Because certainly it's kind of all the suffering of code without any of the joy of seeing it run. Pseudocode is an informal, high-level description. So it's a description of the sort of processes of what's happening with the information. It's not a low-level telling you how to manage the memory and so forth language, not that we're coding in any of those in my class. And it describes the logic or algorithm. It uses structural conventions of a normal programming language. They say normal programming language. I have questions about what normal is. It's not a white space language, but they like it to be indented. It's got things in common with some languages. It is intended for human reading. You should be able to sit around with a group of people, even if they don't know how to code, and take them through your pseudocode, and they should be able to understand it. So, here is some code written according to the VCAA definition. It always starts and ends with begin and end. All the keywords are capitalized and the keywords are bold. I don't know how you're meant to bold it in the exam. Sometimes on the wiki I don't have them bold because it's actually too painful to do, so I'm not strictly speaking adhering to the structure that the VCAA set up. Here we have another example, and it says output instead of print. So unlike a real language, you can use something that makes sense. You can say print, you can say output, you can say display, you can say read, you can say input. You know, as long as the person actually understands it, then they'd be pretty hard pressed to grizzle about it. But it is written like code, so there wouldn't be spaces in the middle of your commands. They're all uppercase, that sort of thing. So, we use indentation to increase readability. It's not a white space language, but it behaves like a white space language for the purpose of the VCAA. So you'll see that begin, and then we've got indent, hello, because that's within the structure of the begin and end. The keywords are in capitals, keywords are in bold. If you want to assign a value, in most programming languages, you would just use the equal sign. You're using the left-facing arrow, left-facing arrow, and you write that by doing your less than sign and then minus minus, and most programs will turn that into an arrow, although most IDEs won't. An IDE isn't a bad place, like Visual Studio Code or Cursor, Notepad++, if that's how you roll. It's okay. If it looks like a three-part arrow, that's perfectly fine. So we can just assign it. We don't have to say the data type. I think it's probably good practice, given that we're using this to line up our ducks and our thinking. I tend to write it. I've just realised something I did wrong there. That int should be bold, and that string should be bold. So, why do we use it? Well, it's a design tool to plan our algorithm. It's the language that's used in the exams. I have heard people argue, everybody should only be able to program in Python. That's all that anybody needs. I actually saw something yesterday on YouTube, somebody dismissing the idea or a quote that Python is the second best language to do for any task, which is to say it's pretty good for most tasks. I think that the beauty of coding in multiple languages is you understand the concepts of code, not just how that language, not just the thinking and the conventions of that language. The pseudocode leans towards procedural code rather than event-based code, but you can write event-based code in it. It is a valuable design tool. It took me a while to come around to it, but if you can make sure that your pseudocode works, then it's much easier to write your program. You've solved the problems without getting these mysterious errors. A couple of years ago, I would have said, well, you can't run pseudocode. These days, if you paste your pseudocode into a generative AI, Black Box, Google Gemini, ChatGPT, what's the other one I'm thinking of? Claude. All of these will actually read your pseudocode and tell you what it thinks the output would be. And in my experience, it's actually really good at it. So you can actually test your pseudocode. I'd say write your own pseudocode because it is about you fleshing out your thinking, but you can test it. So let's do a test in our own heads. What will this code output? There we go. By the way, we see our indents. We see we're assigning values there. We've got some mathematical operators there. We've got our capitals and our bolds, so I've actually written it correctly this time. And then you would be jumping onto Game Show and telling me that it equals, well, let's see, it's 10 divided by 2 is 5, plus 5 is 10. So in fact, the output is 10. What do you notice about the if statement in the situation? Well, what you'll notice is that unlike Python, which has if and then the colon kind of acts like the then, and in PHP and JavaScript, you've got the braces acting as the then and the end if, that you actually have these code words. If then is a pair that works together, and end if. You can also have end while and other things. So you have a start and you have an end to those things that you might otherwise indent in Python or have in braces in JavaScript or PHP. So I'm going to get you, I think this might be the last thing. It is. So fix this pseudocode. So I've written it and I've made mistakes all up and down the dial. Have a go at fixing it up. See how you go with it. See, I can see, you know what? No, you have a go at fixing it. I don't need to tell you everything. And I hope that you found this useful.